I almost died. That's how I got sober. I did not get sober because I wanted to quit drinking. I chose life. I looked in the mirror and I knew I was about to die. And I just felt like fear and alcohol were killing me. And there was this moment where I knew it. And when I looked in my eyes, I looked like an empty shell. And I felt like my spirit was about to leave my body. And I just knew if I don't choose life, it's over.
She has been sober for 15 years, and I can't wait to dive into your journey because, that's a huge milestone. I get I have a wide variety of people from 1 day to 30 years. So I love getting like 15 years. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
So take us back to, a lot of people struggle with their first year. Can you kind of remember what that first year was like?
Yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal. And I thought, in fact, anybody who said that they had over a year sober was lying. I thought they were full of, can we swear? I thought they were full of crap.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was hard. And I think part of the reason why my first year's sobriety was so hard is because I was not only getting sober from alcohol, but I had been on benzos for 2.5 years. I was taking them morning and night per my psychiatrist for anxiety. And so
Oh,
in rehab, they ripped me off the benzos as well. So I'm coming off Klonopin and I didn't understand what the process of benzos was like. And this was 2009. This was like the cave days of mental health. So there wasn't anybody talking on the internet. This is before Instagram, right? So nobody was honest about anxiety at that time. And so I thought I was having a lot of anxiety attacks. And now I realize I was in like hardcore benzo withdrawal, which like 40% of us go through, like a hardcore benzo withdrawal. So the first year was brutal.
I'm so glad that we can talk about this and alcohol because I just talked to somebody who has a brain injury from benzos. And I talked to a couple of my med managers, and they are really hesitant to prescribe too many of these because sometimes the withdrawal looks differently.
Yeah.
Like it's anxiety. People think that they just have anxiety, but it's actual withdrawal or however they describe it. So can you kind of describe what happened to you?
With like my first year of sobriety or with
The benzos.
yeah, well, I can't separate any of it, right? And
Right.
so what I like for my first year of sobriety, I was coming off the benzos and I was also coming off alcohol, which is going to take a certain amount of time for the homeostasis for your brain to balance back out. I also had like pretty much zero coping skills for emotional regulation. My coping skill was drinking. And so drinking is gone. I also didn't know that I was neurodivergent yet. I didn't even know that until way more recently. I was 33 when I got sober. I was 44 when I was diagnosed autistic, and I was 48, which I'm 48 right now. I was 48 when I got diagnosed ADHD. So I had no idea that my nervous system was neurodivergent. So I'm neurodivergent and don't know it. I have no coping skills for my emotions and my stress. I'm coming off benzos. I'm coming off alcohol. All my friends are still at the bar, so I'm going through a new friend group. And also, I had a lot of unresolved trauma from my childhood and subsequent re-victimizations that I had never, I thought you could just sweep everything under the rug. So I didn't
Yep.
even know that that was there. Well, I knew it was there, but I didn't know it was a thing. In 2009, I don't know. It wasn't talked about. And so and plus my mental health stuff, I also legitimately had multiple anxiety disorders, which now I think a lot of that was misdiagnosis. And I think a lot of it was actually autism and ADHD or ADHD and me self-medicating my differences and my sensory sensitivities and my unresolved trauma.
Wow, this is deep. You have quite you could help so many people. So did your channel start with helping people cope with anxiety?
Yeah. When I started YouTube, it was about I wanted to help people with fear. I could see how
Okay.
much fear dominated us. Oh, it's gonna make me cry. Um, because I really feel like at the end, I almost died. That's how I got sober. I did not get sober because I wanted to quit drinking. I chose life. I had a moment where I looked in the mirror and I knew I was about to die. And I just felt like fear and alcohol were killing me. And there was this moment where I knew it. And when I looked in my eyes, I looked like an empty shell. And I felt like my spirit was about to leave my body. And I just knew if I don't choose life, it's over. And then that's when I went to rehab, like shortly after that. Um, And so when I got sober, I felt like I was afraid of everything. Now, I didn't understand all the stuff that I just unpacked about my nervous system and why I was so dysregulated. And so I literally was terrified of everything. I would go to leave the house at the end of my drinking and I would hold the doorknob and I would freeze and I'd be unable to leave. So I was agoraphobic at the end, even. I had a freeway phobia. I wasn't driving on freeways. I was afraid of dogs, afraid of public speaking. I was like afraid of everything. I was afraid of life. I was afraid of living without alcohol in my system, basically. So when I got sober, was having an anxiety attack like every morning. I'd wake up in an anxiety attack, which is also benzo withdrawals, right? But so I'm waking up with these anxiety attacks and I'm like, how can I live? And so I had this moment in my early sobriety where I just, I'm glad I can swear because my motto became fuck fear. Because I realized that the only way to get out of what felt like a hole of fear that I had fallen into was if I was just willing to be courageous every day until I walked out of all that fear. That the only way through it all was to just be scared and just move forward. And so, like, that was leaving the house. That was like living without alcohol, existing without alcohol in my system because I was petrified of like everything. But I knew that my brain had gone into the fear. So I knew my brain could get out of the fear, like it had learned it, if you will, so it could unlearn it. So my motto became fuck fear, and I started doing everything that scared me that was aligned with like a goal, like not drinking, or at 6 months sober when I quit smoking cigarettes, or whatever it was. And so when I started my YouTube channel at 2.5 years sober, it was around helping people with fear. And so I started with anxiety, is what I was talking about.
Wow, anxiety is a huge one. I think a lot of us drink because of anxiety, but it doesn't help our anxiety in the long run. I mean, social anxiety is a big one that I think a lot of people that I've talked to are like, "Well, how do you do social events now?" And I'm like, "It took a while. Nothing happened overnight. I mean, it took a while to get to a point where I could go somewhere and not be scared to socialize without alcohol."
Totally.
So, you went to rehab. Okay. How was that? How long did you go for?
I went to a 30-day treatment center in Los Angeles. There wasn't many that were non-12 step. I was really clear when I got sober that I didn't want to join a religious cult. So my friend called around and it was very hard in 2009 to find a non-12 step rehab, but she found one. It happened to be in Malibu. I also secretly felt like maybe I'll meet Britney Spears there because that was like when she was in her breakdown. I was like, Brit needs a friend. I'll be the friend. Like, I'm down.
You guys take your
Obsessed.
heads together.
Totally. I was like, we'll figure it out. We'll dance. It'll be fine.
Oh, man.
And so, yeah, I went for 30 days. It was hard and it was great because it was the first time in my life, like we'd wake up really early and we'd sit outside and just chain smoke as the sun is rising and like before, because our days were so structured and that was our time to like bond. So we'd like wake up and go out there and like hang out. And it was the first time that I was really honest about how I had been living, about, how I dealt with all the recycling. Like, I remember I always snuck all the recycling out because it would clank and I had all these bottles, and it was like, how do I, like, hide that how much I'm drinking? And so people were saying, like, look, people were joking about the same kind of stuff that I had shame around. So in a way, it helped, like, alleviate that. So that part of it was great, but also it was I feel like there's a lot of problems in the recovery space, whether it's with institutions like rehabs or recovery paths. And there were problems in my rehab that were very messed up. And so I'm kind of split on how I feel about my rehab experience. It was good. I stayed sober. I have not had a drink since I went to rehab. And also, it was bad. There were bad things. I got traumatized there. And so,
Mm.
you know, it's kind of brutal what we go through. That's why I'm so glad that you have your channel and you're helping so many people. It's so hard and it's going to make me emotional. We're so vulnerable and we don't get treated very well all the time. And we don't know that we have rights. We don't know that we matter. We don't have voices. Not everybody, I'm not speaking for everybody, but we don't know that we could speak up for ourselves. We're people pleasers. We're used to the self-betrayal. We're used to shoving our feelings down. So when we're in harm's way, either we might not necessarily recognize it or might not speak up loud enough to protect ourselves. Or we've been not believed so many times by trying to speak up that we would rather deal with the betrayal on our own or whatever happened than risk the second betrayal of speaking up and not being believed. And
Right.
so, yeah, my heart goes out because it's a vulnerable time, and I think so much we have to trust ourselves and our guts, and if our gut says this is dangerous or this is sketchy or this is off, that's it. Nobody else has to validate that. Nobody else has to agree with us. We don't have to tell anybody. But if our gut says it's wrong, it is wrong. Not wrong universally, but wrong for us. And so that's why I'm just such a big fan of, and my only real advice really is to trust your gut. Well, also, now that I've left AA, it's my other advice is critical think. Think critically. Otherwise, I don't
So
really have a lot of advice. I just have a lot of stories.
well, we wanna hear all the stories. So you, um, said that you left AA, what, like 5 years ago?
Yeah. So I went to a non-12-step rehab. I did go to one meeting in rehab. It was optional, and that was right before I left rehab because I was so scared. I didn't know how I was gonna fly home without drinking, and rehab's
Oh,
expensive, so I was like, "I can't blow it all on the flight home," which I know a lot of us do, and
right.
so there's no shame in that. Like, it's hard to stay stopped. Um, but so I went to one AA meeting in rehab, and the night I got home from rehab in 2 hours, I walked down the street and went to an AA meeting, and then just kinda got, sucked into the system, got indoctrinated really fast. I was scared, I was alone, these people looked happy, they love bombed me as they do. They gave friendship with conditions. You have to read the book if you wanna hang out with us, and I wanted to hang out with them, so I started getting indoctrinated, and I was inside Alcoholics Anonymous as a true believer for 10 years, for 10 and a half years, and then I left when the pandemic started, so I left the first week of April 2020, so it's been 5 years now that I've been out of AA.
Sorry, I was just gonna make a comment on I would've probably left during COVID too.
Why
Sorry.
is that?
No, I mean, like, could you just imagine, like, everybody just frantically, like, in there, like, so scared of each other after you've been with each other for so long? Seems like it'd be pretty stressful.
Yeah, that's not how it happened for me. I can totally see that, and there was a big trend, I think, of a lot of people either getting sober with COVID or getting sober right after COVID with all the drinking, or leaving AA because they didn't wanna transition into the Zoom meetings, or
Right.
realizing maybe they didn't need it the way they thought they did because the shutdowns and lockdowns changed everything. I did the quarantine. We actually weren't locked down where I was in Indonesia for the pandemic.
Oh,
So we didn't have our airport was closed, so I was stuck on the island. I was on Bali, that's where I lived. And so I was on the island, stuck, not stuck, I chose to stay there. Not a victim in that at all. But for me, it was more of a perfect storm of things that had been brewing for a while within myself, including cognitive dissonance was growing really big. The chaos of the pandemic reminded me of my chaos of early sobriety and how impressionable our minds can be, and it felt like people's behaviors were being controlled very quickly by fear messaging and all the stuff that was happening with the pandemic. I get that there was a virus, right? But also, I just felt like with all the fear messaging, with this threat of death and all the chaos that's happening, it reminded me of when I was getting sober, and I started to think like, what have I been believing? I was really vulnerable when I went to AA. There was a lot of fear messaging. I was scared I was gonna die. So I was very susceptible to have my mind controlled. And what was I believing? What was I sold? And so I remembered that because I was an AA true believer, when I did a road trip in 2018, I drove all around the United States and I stopped at Bill and Doctor Bob are the co-founders of AA. So I stopped at Bill's house, Bill's grave, Doctor Bob's house, Doctor Bob's grave, the full on like true believer tourism. And when I was at Bill's house, the tour guide said, well, when AA, when they talk about there was 100 people in the beginning, that's not exactly true. There was only 82 people, but Bill rounded up because he was a salesman. And that little, like, red flag, like, went like, I, like, buried it because I was, like, super, like, indoctrinated and, like, in the ideology really deep. And so I wasn't like, it flagged, but it was like a red flag, but I didn't really, I buried it in my mind. And so when the pandemic started, I remembered all of this stuff came together, and I remembered, like, wait, Bill was a salesman. Wait, Bill was a salesman. Then I'm like, what the fuck did Bill sell me? 'Cause I started getting pissed, like, 'cause I felt like, wow, did I get emotionally, like, manipulated? What happened? I was so vulnerable. I thought I was gonna die. Yeah, I stayed sober, so I'm not a victim in any of this, but I wanted to know what Bill sold me. So I got a book on, Amazon about how to write a sales letter, and I had my iPad out, And I went and I knew the big book back to front because I had been in it for 10 years. I had sponsored all these women. I'd done the steps multiple times. I was like hardcore in it. And so I wrote the sales letter out as a sales page. And when I read it, like the outline of a sales page, and when I read it, I was like, "Oh my God, I don't believe it." And it felt like the moment that I realized that Santa wasn't true. And no matter how much I loved Santa or AA, no matter how much I saw proof of Santa, like he nibbled some cookies and left me some presents, no matter how much I saw proof of AA, it was just like, "Oh, snap. I got played. Like, it's not real." And that's how I felt. And so immediately it was over for me, the same way the Santa hoax was over immediately for me. That's how AA felt. Immediately it was like a veil was lifted and it was over. Now I wasn't scot-free at that point because I had a lot of the conditioning to work through and deprogramming and stuff, but immediately there was no way I could go back, and that was it for me.
Interesting. Interesting. So, I mean, a little off topic, but there was a volleyball coach, my daughter's volleyball coach, this spring season, and she downloaded this book or ordered this book, whatever, about women's hormones and intermittent fasting with your hormones. And so like the next day I had a doctor's appointment and I talked to him about it, and he's very like he's a lot like me, like fitness and just eating normally or whatever. Uh like down to earth, whatever. And he's like, "Megan, it's just a sales tactic." And I'm like, "Oh, so it doesn't work?" He's like, "You know how to eat." He's like, "You don't need some salesperson selling you a book on how to eat." I'm like, "Well, I guess like I mean, it just brings it all in. Like everybody can sell something. Like it just how good of a salesman are you?"
Yeah, well, I was sold Santa real good, and the whole you know who was in on Santa the Santa mythology? Hollywood, media, the parents, teacher, the community, American culture was in on the Santa myth. They all knew it too. You know who else is in on the AA myth? Hollywood, media, AA or America, families. Everyone's in on the AA myth too, just like Santa. Like, wait, I got played. I got conned.
But so, I mean, I've never been to AA and a lot of my community knows that, but some probably don't know that. I stopped with my own version. Like I started a YouTube channel and it helped me. That was my community. Um that's the short version of it. But it has helped so many people, but there is quite a controversy in it. So, I like hearing that you did it for 10 plus years and then now you are reserved about it.
I wouldn't say reserved about it. I would say that I would never recommend anybody to go. That's where I stand now. And I feel that it's harmful and that it's 2025. There are a lot of ways to get sober now
Yeah.
that didn't even exist when I got sober. But there were ways that existed when I got sober that I could have done instead of AA, and there's no reason that you need to go believe outdated, nonsensical ideology from a salesman in the 1930s when we have modern science today. Uh, there's no reason why you need to go believe that, all of that stuff, and it's not without harm. I am still 5 years out of AA. I left AA April 6th, 2020. So it's been 5 years, like in a month or something, right? It is still not all out of my head. I am still trying to get AA out of my head. So, did AA help me or did it harm me? I got sober. But the binary thinking of AA is good because it helps people or AA is good because it gets you sober, but at what cost? At what cost? Nobody is looking at the long-term effects of having your brain washed. When I got to AA, there was all these jokes about, yeah, it's brainwashing, but like we need our brains washed. And that literally was the culture inside the rooms where I got there. I actually saw a talk recently, like from 2 weeks ago, of RFK Jr. saying that. I'm in AA, I'm 42 years sober, and when I got there, I needed the brainwashing. And he's making a joke about how he needed brainwashing. And I'm like, okay, but what about the unbrainwashing? What about the long-term consequences of that brainwashing? When do we talk about when we no longer need that conditioning in our head? And when do we address the actual washing of our brains? Meaning brainwashing, mind control, thought reform, it's all the same, right? It used to be called thought reform and then or brainwashing originally, like in Maoist China and stuff, but it's the same thing. Our brains are getting conditioned to believe nonsensical ideology. And Okay, that does help some of us get sober, and I'm one of those people. But at what point can we look at what we're actually believing? Is it actually true? What does modern science say? What is the next path forward? How long do you need to believe that? And what about evolving? So here I am stuck in Alcoholics Anonymous, blinded by the reality of it's 1930s ideology. It's not facts. It's literally ideas of a salesman from the 1930s. Like, it's not facts. Hello, Santa's not a fact. It looked real. AA felt real. It doesn't mean it's real. But what did it do? It blinded me. I did not find out that I'm autistic. And I understand that girls and women, a lot of us get misdiagnosed or
Yeah.
chronically medically gaslit, right?
We're
Or
the lost generation, as Mel Robbins explains.
yeah. And so it was 1 year after I left AA that I got assessed as autistic, and 4 years after, ADHD. But my very first year of sobriety, I felt like in that really chaotic first year without alcohol and coming off benzos and all that, I felt like I was ADHD. I constantly said to my roommate back then, I think I'm ADHD. I think I'm ADHD. But I was kind of joking. I didn't know that I should actually go get tested for it, that it's like real. But my sponsor, meanwhile, inside this church basement, who was a random person in a church basement, she's not my medical practitioner. She's not my licensed therapist who knows my history. She's not like any sort of medical health provider. She's telling me that all these ways that my brain works, that now I understand as ADHD, are called untreated alcoholism. She told me my only problem is alcoholism and the only solution is Alcoholics Anonymous. So I never went out to get diagnosed anywhere else or to understand myself. I'm doing the 12 steps. I'm trying to give my higher power my character defects, which are actually literally autistic traits or ADHD traits. So one of the core traits of autism, as I understand it, is monotropic thinking. Or in ADHD, it's called hyperfocus. I could focus on one thing for a really long time. So I can stay in one place for a really long time, to the point where I'm forgetting to go to the bathroom, eating, whatever. And like that's a skill. And also it could harm me at times, or it can go both ways, right? Not harm me, but she's having me write this trait of my brain, the way that my brain's actually wired as a character defect, and I'm going to my higher power and I'm praying away. By the way, I didn't want a God, but I got there and I was told if I don't get a God, I'm going to die. So I'm being totally coerced and manipulated into Bill's religion. And I'm bringing my higher power of my understanding these traits of my brain. I might as well have been praying my bones away or my eye color away. It's ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? So the coercive control is unreal inside a high control group slash quasi-religious cult or full-blown cult, depending upon your viewpoint of it. So it's not without harm. That's why I've recently, literally on my 5 years sober from AA birthday, which was just 6 weeks ago. So my 5 years sober from AA birthday, I started talking about leaving AA on the internet. And so now I'm doing daily videos on my Sobriety Bestie YouTube channel about leaving AA. And it's brought up even more to my consciousness and awareness about how harmful Alcoholics Anonymous is. So when people say it saves lives, I'm like, if you want to say Alcoholics Anonymous saves lives, then you also have to say that it takes lives. Because as soon as someone says on my channel, AA saves lives, how dare you say that? All I think about is the people that I knew in AA who unalived themselves. And like, if you're going to claim you guys save lives, you got to claim the lives you take. No one's taking responsibility for my friends. Nobody has. So does AA save lives? If so, it takes lives. Do you know what I mean? Sorry,
Wow,
it
that,
gets me
like,
so
gives me
emotional every time
goosebumps.
because their heads just come there. I just think of them, and it's like, and who's at fault for that? Who's responsible for those misguided people? Alcoholism is not a diagnosis, and it never has been in the United States. It's a self-diagnosis in these church basements. I'm autistic ADHD. I had unresolved trauma. I probably still have some, but I had a lot of it when I got sober. I had mental health issues, and I'm told it's all alcoholism. And some of us don't make it when we're told that.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I feel very deeply about this, and I know people are going to hate me for saying it, but I'd rather be hated and be myself and stick up for what I believe in than shut up and watch it continue to happen. I don't want to be a part of the problem.
No, 100%. And I mean, that's why I say, like, on my channel, I have, like, a pretty I don't even wanna say equal amount. I definitely have, like, some on the AA side and some not on the AA side, and I can't personally speak about it on my behalf because I haven't personally stepped foot into a building, even though I've had several people be like, "Oh, you need AA." And I'm like, "Why? I'm sober." Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's steps that I need to work on myself, like, I need to work on my inner like, there's things in my life that I still need to work on, but, I mean, I don't know, the thought of stepping into a group setting and talking out loud terrified me.
Yeah. I think most of us have that same feeling. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was literally panic attack every meeting, like, literally panic attack at every meeting. When I was 8 months sober, I was working in Sydney in Bondi, Australia. I was there for a month, and I was working at this startup, and across the street from our office was, a church, and that's where the AA meetings were at lunch, and so I was going to a meeting every day on my lunch break, and I'd go, and if they didn't identify me that I was, from overseas before the halftime, at halfway through the meeting, they have you raise your hand if you're from overseas. So, as soon as they found out I'm from overseas, if they hadn't already called me up, I had to speak. Basically, I'm speaking at every meeting, at every lunch break for this job that I'm at for a month or 5 weeks in Australia. And so, because the way that their meetings go in Australia, or at least the ones that I went to, they're called ID meetings. They pick one speaker who speaks for 10 minutes, and then that person picks someone, and then that person picks. So it's all speakers, the whole meeting. So every day at my every lunch break, I'm going up, and the first week, I just panicked and snot flying everywhere, and I'm crying, and I'm like, I hate this. I hate you guys. I hate coming here on my lunch break. I hate that I have to speak. I'm freaking out. And then I'm like hyperventilating and snotting, and and it was I did not like it but you know what? I was told if I don't say yes to everything AA says, I will die. That's the programming. And so I am grateful that I got over my phobia of public speaking. That was I had my fuck fear thing, so, like, I literally had a phobia, so I would get up there and hyperventilate, and they're all clapping, and I'm like, "I hate you guys." And then they're like, "We're gonna love you till you love yourself." I'm like, "I just what?" And then I go back to the office, I have mascara everywhere, and then my boss is, like, all rogue, he's putting shots on my desk for me to drink, and I'm like, "I can't, I just can't, I can't, I wanna go to the church. I don't wanna go hyperventilate at the church, I don't want my boss drinking." I'm like, "Ah." So yeah, first year of sobriety was all sorts of feels. A lot of emotions I think I had, like the first 2.5 years of my sobriety was really like an emotional roller coaster. But I had all sorts of stuff that I was kind of coming back to homeostasis on.
I feel like a lot of like, I've been talking a lot about this lately, is that first year is, like, white knuckling it, getting through all the firsts and, like, learning yourself again, and then going into that second year, and you start having to heal yourself, and I talked to somebody that I coach actually about this, and, this person tried AA and got to step 4 and just kind of had a really hard time with that. Somebody that's been sober for I don't know how many long time has told this person like, "Hey, um, you shouldn't start working on all these traumas until afterwards." Because like that first year of sobriety, I don't think I ever paid attention to any of the traumas until I got into the second year and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's so much from my past that I need to work on and be honest about." And just like I couldn't imagine dealing with all that my first year of sobriety. It's an
Emotional.
emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, but I literally that what you just said is one of the things I hate the most about Alcoholics Anonymous. Or hate's the wrong word, heartbreak. One of my biggest heartbreaks about AA. Because my friend was told that by his sponsor. You can't get any other help besides AA until you finish your fifth step. So the fourth step is where you write it all down, and the fifth step's where you read your fourth step to your sponsor. He didn't make it. He never made it to his fifth step. He
Oh,
unalived himself. So that's why, like, that line right there, like, I don't know if anger is the word. It's so fucked up to be giving medical advice to people who need serious help. The steps are literally stolen from a religion, the Oxford group. You're trying to put religion on people who we know better now. We have mental health practitioners. We have support for these people. They literally don't all make it, and there's this bullshit line in Alcoholics Anonymous that says, "Some have to die so that others can live." It's like, no! You're literally killing people! Like, stop it! Stop
Wow.
telling people to get off their meds, that they can't see other practitioners. Now, I know this is not every group, and it's not everybody, but if your room isn't safe, can you imagine if, because a lot of people say, "Well, my AA isn't like that. I never heard that in my AA," and it's like, good for you. Nobody cares. Everyone's happy for you. We're not talking about you. We're talking about my friend who's dead. We're talking about the other people who got harmed. And could you imagine if, like, an institution, because AA is an institution, let's say like Target, or Target was like, well, most of our, like, that's not how every Target isn't like that. Not every Target people get killed in. Not every Target's like that. So what, when you're really vulnerable, you're supposed to go around and figure out which Target's safe? Or can Target
Right.
take responsibility and make all of Target safe? If it's not 100% safe, it's not safe. And we're really
Right.
vulnerable when we get there. And the coercive control is the problem. That's why I'm like, does it help people or does it harm people? Or is it really, it's nuanced? Because if you're told you can't, like what you just said, when you heard that you can't go to get like an actually trained medical health provider until you work these religious like steps to God, whether you want to call it spiritual or religious or whatever you want to call it, it's a path to God. It's Bill Wilson's path to God that he got from a religion. And so they can't get actual help until they do a 1930s salesman's path to God. It's literally insane. And it's not just insane, it's criminal. It should be criminal. I didn't mean to get so intense on this, but like,
No,
I'm like,
no, it's
I guess the
it
spirit of my friends who are no longer alive are like possessing me right now. Not possessing me, but you know what I mean? I didn't think I was
right.
going to like feel this, have all these feels on your call. I thought we were going to talk about how you got divorced from Jack and I got divorced from Jose Cuervo because of my first blackout on tequila, but that's not where this is going. So I'll trust the flow.
Uh, so, uh, it's just you're so right about the whole, like, well, our target doesn't run it this way, like, that whole concept because there is a group of people that I have interviewed who are all from the same state, and they're all so involved in AA, and I'm like, I have not heard super positive things about AA, and then this group of people come, and I'm like, so you and I always joke or not joke, I don't know, I'm like, "Wow, they have a really good AA in that part of Washington," and because I've heard stories like I wanted to walk out there and unalive myself after I got out of that meeting, and so I think it's just you're right, it is per, like, group.
Yeah, but the fundamental thing about it is what AA programs us to believe is harmful. No questions asked, not even debatable. People will say, AA saved my life, or AA is all good, or my group is fine. But I don't know if I want to make this analogy. An analogy just came into my head, and I'm like, literally, half the people at Jonestown's willingly drank the Kool-Aid, knowing that they were killing them, unaliving themselves. Okay? So when you're deep in programming, you don't understand what you're programmed with. You can't see it. The fish in water doesn't know it's in water. So when you say your group is great, you know what? I loved AA the entire time. Well, not the beginning. The beginning was hard. I loved AA. That I went to Bill Wilson's house. I cried on Bill Wilson, the founder of AA's grave, thanking him for channeling the book from God, thanking him for my life, and I meant it, and I was crying. I was drunk on the Kool-Aid. It doesn't mean that it's not harmful, because what else am I believing? I'm believing that I'm powerless, that I have to outsource my agency and my autonomy to a sponsor, the group, and a higher power. That's literally how Bill Wilson designed it. It means that there are so many things that you have to believe when you're in AA, like you have a fatal progressive disease. You have to believe you have a disease. Not only do you have a disease called alcoholism, which is not even a diagnosis in the US and never has been, you have to believe that it's fatal and progressive. The joke or the narrative is, the metaphor is that there's a disease, your disease is outside in the parking lot doing push-ups, meaning your alcoholism is getting stronger even when you're sober. So your disease wants you dead when you're sober. That is all literally made up ideas. That is not medical fact. But when you're believing all that, but then you're also high off of this religiosity, you're on this pink cloud because you're deep in this, in the spirit of the religion or whatever has like caught you. I felt good. I liked AA. I loved AA. I loved AA. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't being harmed and it wasn't affecting me. The people who leave AA say things like, I didn't realize that it completely sabotaged my self-worth. Each year I was there, my self-worth got smaller and smaller and smaller. So I don't think, well, first of all, I don't think anybody in AA is going to be able to hear what I'm saying. They're just going to be angry. And I understand that. I'm not
Well,
for
it's just
everybody.
like no, no. Well, I mean, but that's perfect.
But the people who have left AA and nobody will tell them the truth, that's who I feel, that's who I'm speaking to right now. Because when I left AA in April 2020, I felt like nobody was being honest about it. And I couldn't find any professional that I respected in the addiction space that would say, you can leave AA. It's safe to leave AA, that you won't die if you leave AA, because I believe that I would die if I left because that's the programming. And I also believed that, or they wouldn't say, and nobody would say that recovery isn't forever. Recovery is forever. And I don't believe in a forever recovery model. It's a model, it's not a fact. All the mythology with recovery, it's like, I feel like society is like, let's just shove him into the church basement forever and let's just leave him there. Good, we've solved our addiction problem. Let's move on.
I
And I'm
had
like,
somebody.
but wait a minute. What? What? And then to come to find out, I leave and it turns out that alcoholism isn't a thing, and I drank because of my neurodivergence and all these other things, and I could heal my trauma, I could understand my neurodivergence, I could optimize my brain, I could accept myself and not do these like character defect, like praying it away. Why am I praying the autism away? Hello, sponsor.
Yeah.
Like, why are you giving me medical advice? Like, what?
Right. Somebody one time mentioned, I'm not in recovery, I am recovered. I think I did a podcast with them, and I want to say I can't remember who it was, but they were like, I'm recovered, I'm not in recovery. I was like, oh, that's a good one.
100%. So when I was really young, I broke my leg and I had a cast. So I recovered from the broken leg. The cast was removed. The cast helped, right? And then the
Right.
cast is removed. And then later, much later, decades later, when I went to do a half marathon, I was training, I was running a lot, and I had a hip injury. And so my hips are a little bit uneven, and that may or may not be from the broken leg. I have no way of knowing. Let's just say that it is. That because of my broken leg, I have a vulnerability in my leg. It doesn't mean I can't run. It doesn't mean I can't walk. It doesn't mean I can't use my leg. And it certainly doesn't mean that I should leave my cast on forever and have it be a shrine. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so I recovered from my broken leg, but I'm not talking about my broken leg every day. I'm recovered from my broken leg. It's not a thing. I'm done.
Right.
And so that's how I look at alcohol addiction. It's like my problem was that I was autistic and didn't know it, the way that I see it now. ADHD was there too, but really my problem was that I was autistic and I didn't know it. And because I was autistic, I was easy prey. The predators know who is socially different and target us. So
Yep.
when I was a little girl, I got targeted on the playground by the janitor. He groomed me, and the grooming worked with me because I was getting seen, I was getting loved. I was and I don't realize, I don't understand because of my social differences what's going on, or that I should tell mommy or anything like that,
Right.
right? So why am I getting sexually abused in childhood? Because I'm autistic. 90% of us have CSA by the time we're 18. 90% of autistic girls. And 70% of us are re-victimized. That's my story. So what happens to me by the time I'm now 12, 13, it's happening again by somebody else. So then I go in super dysregulated nervous system. So I'm still autistic, I'm ADHD, but I don't know those things. So I'm still easier prey in a way. And I don't say that like, I say that because it's like facts in the data. When I read all the research stuff, I'm not saying that as like my opinion, but it's also my experience. And in fact, autistic women are 13 more times likely to unalive themselves than non-autistic women.
Wow.
We have a lot of trauma buried inside of us. And some of us go to alcohol addiction, especially with ADHD. There's a 70% overlap as far as the studies I've looked at between autism and ADHD. And so people with ADHD or ADHDers are, depending upon the study, 5 to 10 times more likely to go into alcohol addiction. So I have the trauma I have the desire to socially fit in, mask my social differences, my autistic differences. I have my dysregulated nervous system naturally because I'm kind of naturally dysregulated because of my neurodivergence, but also I have the unresolved trauma. So then I go into alcohol addiction. So I forget the whole point of what I was now I just lost the plot because I went so deep into, like, the backstory, what the question was. But so there's all this stuff going on. So when I show up into AA, um, my problem isn't alcoholism. Alcoholism is an idea that Bill got into American culture. He had AA number 5. Her name was Marty Mann. Spent all of the 1940s going around America getting his disease model, all his ideas deep into the culture as if it was fact. Now we're all hypnotized by Bill's ideas as if Bill was not a salesman. He literally was not even a psychologist. Even if he was a psychologist or a doctor, that was the 1930s. Would you want your surgeon to be from the 1930s with no updated information? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so they didn't understand when they wrote the big book any of this other stuff that was going on. I never had untreated alcoholism. I had undiagnosed neurodivergence, unresolved trauma, and that was related. No ability to deal with my emotional regulation because we weren't talking about any of that stuff. I'm a Gen X. We weren't talking about any of that stuff growing up. It wasn't normal to go to therapy in the 90s, like when I was like coming of age and all that. And so I didn't know any of those things. I didn't know about mindfulness or any of that stuff.
Right.
And so why do I need to be in recovery forever? Like, I recovered from the alcohol addiction. I recovered from being on the benzos. I recovered from being a cigarette smoker. I recovered from my broken leg. What am I left with after that? So after I left AA, I had to recover from recovery. It's a thing. It was very difficult. In fact, this is going to sound coconut bananas to a lot of people. But like bananas AF, it was harder for me to leave AA than to get sober
Oh.
because there was no community. There was nobody validating my experience. I thought I was going to die and nobody would tell me that I wouldn't die except my therapist that I hired. And everybody shunned me. All my friends from AA wouldn't talk to me because I left. I understand why, that's part of the conditioning, but to leave AA for me was harder than getting sober, and getting sober was one of the hardest things. I used to say it was the hardest thing I ever did. Leaving AA was harder because there was nobody there for me. So the way that I think about it now, and these are just my ideas, I think everyone should do their own research, do their own critical thinking, and talk to their own medical providers and figure out for themselves because we're not the same. Different genetics, different neurology, different past, different addiction, different whatever. The way that I see it now is recovery is always temporary, whatever kind of recovery we're talking about. And alcoholism, the way that it's defined in AA's big book and in society in general, is not a thing. Alcohol addiction is real. Alcohol use disorder is what it's called in America now. I had alcohol use disorder. I recovered from it. Even the NIH, which is an American, like what,
Somebody I get a lot of hate for saying AUD. They're like, "Just call it for what it is." And I'm like, "Oh
yeah,
my god."
yeah, that is what it is. It's called alcohol use disorder in America. And they say at 5 years, you have stable recovery. So the American government calls it out at 5 years. People are different and you can choose to stay in recovery forever. You can choose whatever you want. That's the
Yeah.
point, is choice. It's having freedom and autonomy and agency over your life. If you've drank yourself into sobriety, you've already been to hell and back. I just want us to not be lied to. You know what
Right.
I mean? We
I feel
deserve to
like
know the truth. We deserve to know that we can get free, and no one will fucking say it because it's a sacred
no,
cow. And I call
yeah.
BS. No, we can leave.
I think you need to write a book if you haven't already. Like, I mean, because a lot of the things that you're saying is like I was just talking to somebody else about this. So many quit lit books, they all have a different opinion of alcohol use disorder and whether it's The Unbroken Brain. I feel like I don't know if you've read that before. Ended up being diagnosed with Asperger's, and she calls addiction a learning disorder. And it just you got diagnosed with autism and ADHD, which I've been diagnosed with ADHD, which when I got sober, it made a lot of sense why I drank because I couldn't stabilize myself. I mean, I'm probably undiagnosed with other things too, but, some people have, talked about they got diagnosed with a borderline personality disorder, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like, a lot of things just start, like, popping up, like, "Oh, maybe this is an actual thing. Maybe we are not being diagnosed properly to deal with our alcohol."
100%. I've had a lot so it's only been 6 weeks that I've been talking about leaving AA online, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me. I feel like we're really hungry for this conversation right now. I wish this conversation was happening 5 years ago when I left. It was so isolating and it was so hard to do it alone. And a lot of people are reaching out to me who are bipolar type 2, and they left AA, got a proper diagnosis, and got on the proper medication, and they're doing great, and they're doing better than ever. And so I'm getting people with all sorts of backgrounds reaching out to me and letting me know what their assessments were. So I mean, I don't know why this is controversial. Hello, we should go to medical professionals and get actually diagnosed and find out what's actually going on. Like, hello, why is that such a like controversial? Why is that make people angry? Like literally
Right.
alcoholism is not a diagnosis. Let's go get the real let's go find out what it is. Because we're all
Yeah.
different. And then we have different
Yeah.
paths forward. You know,
And
like
wait.
I found out
Yeah.
I'm autistic and before I found out I'm ADHD. So I found out well, it's May now. It was last August I got my ADHD diagnosis. So not even that long ago. But I thought it the first year I was sober, but my sponsor just I wouldn't say gaslit because she didn't know, but she misdiagnosed me. She's like, "No, it's all alcoholism." But if I would have known sooner, which I can't, but other people can by people like us being honest about it. I mean, I'm doing the keto diet because the keto makes my brain work better. So I run on ketones. So autism and ADHD are actually a lot easier for me to hold. I don't know how to like say it right, but
Manage.
when my brain runs on ketones, my entire life is so much better. I don't have to go to a church basement forever. But if I can understand what's actually going on, I can support myself, accommodate myself, and organize my life in a way where I can thrive based on modern science.
Right.
I want
Oh
that
my
for
gosh.
all of us. Like,
Yeah.
literally, we've been to hell and back. Like, let's let's get free.
So, it kind of brings up, I mean, I know, like, usually, like, I like to get everybody's stories, and but this is, like, a huge topic. So, it made me think that, back in the 30s, up until recently, did mental health become a thing? Like you said, it's just been in the cave, and I think that with the latest generation, they're not drinking as much, probably because they actually aren't afraid to talk about their mental health and, doing something about it. For those of us, I mean, I remember growing up and everybody just made fun of everybody, like, "Oh, you got a problem, you're crazy, you're psycho," you know? It was just you didn't wanna talk about it,
Yeah,
and now people are talking about it, and so I think maybe there's the latest generation, what is it, Gen Z? I don't know, I can't keep up. Um, they maybe aren't drinking as much, but I mean, they're probably smoking more weed, but, like, I don't know, like, it's a thing. Mental health is a huge thing, I think, when it comes to having an addiction.
100%. A lot of it's self medication. And I self medicated with alcohol for 17 years. So I drank 16 to 33. And then I self medicated with AA for 10 years. And then that first year after AA, I got to find out what I was self-medicating. I'd already resolved a lot of my trauma by the time I left AA. I had gone to therapy and done all sorts of things. But yeah, I really got to find out. And what I found out was my divergent neurology. And I can't even tell you, like, finding out, getting assessed autistic at 44. I mean, what the fuck?
It's
But there's people
crazy.
that are in their 70s or 80s even finding out, especially like women. Um, 'Cause it was in the dark for so long for many of us. But that was the one of the, like, the best things that ever happened to me in my life was understanding that it was the biggest unlock for me because it explained my entire life, and then I couldn't really do the serenity prayer, which they always preach in AA. I like the serenity prayer, accept the things you can't change and have the courage to change things you can, but then you need the wisdom to know the difference, and because I thought everything was alcoholism, I was in the wrong framework. And yeah, the control of that framework, because it's very controlling, did help enable me to get sober. But the framework isn't accurate. And there's other frameworks that also can help people get sober. So now the way I am, because I have a little bit of PTSD from like being in the wrong framework for so long and feeling like I was played, like what was I believing? What the hell? So now I like, even though I've had these two assessments, I hold those I don't take those as my identity. I take them as maps, not
Huh.
cages. So they help me orient myself so that I can like go triple down or go 10x on my strengths and like understand how I can work with what I'm not as good with, or forgive myself, let myself off the hook if I have like, I don't know, like I can be disorganized with that ADHD thing, and like I organize myself in a way that works with the way my brain works instead of
Yeah.
thinking I'm supposed to be a way that I'm not, and then praying to God to remove it all or whatever. So the level of self-compassion, I guess self-empathy, and really self-love, but self-love almost sounds like, I don't know, I feel like that word's kind of played out. Like the level of self-acceptance that I have now, I could not have had when I was inside AA or when I was drinking, because I didn't have the level of awareness of myself. And now I feel like I have this quiet confidence that I couldn't have had until I had the proper assessments where I know how I am, I know how my brain works, and I can just be me without like shame around it, or I don't know, like without feeling like I'm supposed to be different than I am, which is how I felt my
Okay.
entire life.
I think that's true for so many of us. That's like nailed that one on the head.
It's just so true for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
Uh,
so grateful for it. So, and the way that I knew I was ready to leave AA and the way that I knew I was ready to get sober or make any big change in my life, because this is relevant for all of us, is my gut, my instincts, my intuition, listening, trusting what I felt inside, even though I was terrified. I was terrified to get sober. It was the hardest day of my life. Flying to rehab. Oh, and I'll give you like one drunk story. So I looked in the mirror that day and I knew I was dying. I was terrified. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to die." And so what did I do? Anybody who like was a drinker will know what I did. Did I quit drinking that day?
no.
No. Who quits drinking? That's bananas. What did I do? I quit looking in mirrors, right?
Yeah,
Because it was scary to look in a mirror because I knew I was dying. Fuck mirrors.
exactly.
Drinking's gonna stay. Drinking
Yep.
is life. It's how I'm staying alive. It's saving me. And so then I went to rehab a week after that mirror experience. That was like the very end, though. I knew I was barely hanging on, and so, but I hadn't looked in a mirror in in that whole week since, because I was afraid of
Um,
looking in a mirror. I was like too afraid to look in a mirror because I knew I was dying. So I get to rehab, and I'm arrogant AF. And I don't have a problem with alcohol. All this denial, like, no, no, alcohol is not a problem. I'm spending all of this money and spending a month of my life here because I don't want it to become a problem. I was sure that's. And I get there and I walk in,
oh my gosh.
and I didn't drink that morning actually, because only someone with a problem with alcohol would drink on their way to rehab. I don't have a problem with alcohol. So I get there, and then the therapist is like, "How much have you had to drink today?" And I'm super arrogant. I'm like, "Nothing. I don't have a problem with alcohol. I just don't want one." My problem's anxiety. I was just saying my problem's anxiety. And then she's like, "How did you get your black eye?"
Oh,
I didn't know I had a black eye.
because you didn't look in the mirror.
And I looked at her and I was like, "What?" And she handed me from her purse this little circular makeup compact, and I opened it up and I looked in that mirror and I was just like, "Oh shit. I don't even know what happened to my face." And I handed her the mirror back, and that was like my moment of surrender. I was like, "I don't even know what's going on. I give up. I'm ready to be helped."
At 33.
Yeah. And
Oh
to
my
be
god.
fair, I was alone in my house drinking that last week, so it wasn't from somebody else. I knew I had slipped in the bathtub. I had a huge bruise on my back. I think I gave myself a black eye as part of that, like, slipping and falling when I was really drunk. but I didn't even know. I'd been on a flight. I flew from San Francisco to LA. I have no idea I have a black eye. So I'm
Everybody's
just
probably looking at you like you're crazy.
I mean, I barely made it at the end, so I have so much, I just have so much, I guess, love and empathy for anybody who survives alcohol. It's brutal. We don't all make it. We don't.
Right.
Addiction is brutal, and we don't all make it, and that's part of why I feel like we deserve to know the truth.
Amen to that. So for those that are in that denial phase, what would you say to them?
This line from AA comes to my head, and it's the line that I've heard in AA over and over and over again is, "Your bottom is when you stop digging." That you don't have to wait for it to get any worse to wanna have a better life. That you can make a change now. And
Ooh.
for some people, that would work. For me, I had to be out of options. I had to feel like I was about to die. And so, there's a lot of ways to get sober, and you could find a way that works for you.
Right.
And you don't even have to get sober. You could if you feel like you don't necessarily have a problem and you're in that maybe it's denial or maybe you don't, because it's hard to right? Especially you wouldn't relate to being in denial if you were. But you could still you could go to, like, Google Smart Recovery, check out what that's about. Decide that you're gonna go to 1 meeting a week for a month or go to 3 meetings in a month and just go and because if you try something once, you might, like, I don't know, maybe if you try it a couple of times and see what you think. Is there anything there that's helpful for you? Do you wanna give up 1 drinking night a week and just go to a Smart Recovery meeting or do something else? Or do you wanna be honest to your therapist? Because
Or your
I was
doctor.
not honest to my therapist. I didn't start being honest to my therapist until she handed me a mirror and I saw I had a black eye and I was like, "Oh shit, I better be honest to my therapist if I wanna get better." So I lied to my psychiatrist. So he had me on benzos, but I didn't tell him about my drinking. Not the way it was. "Oh, 2 drinks a day, that's it." No, it's not like that.
No.
So if you're not sure if you have a problem with alcohol, but you don't think that you're an alcoholic, first of all, it's not a thing. But if you don't think that you need to get sober, you can start with being honest to your help. Get help and be honest.
I love the acronym HOW, like honest, open, and willing, because too many people I feel like are not honest, open, and willing to alcohol.
It's hard because when everything is so hard and you have struggled so much, maybe you've been in abusive relationships, maybe you had a messed up childhood, maybe people that you love are no longer alive, maybe bad things have happened to you, maybe you did bad things. Whatever it is that you've been through, how do you give up your best friend? Alcohol was my best friend. Alcohol was the only thing that
Mhm.
calmed my system down, and I was so dysregulated. How do you give up the one thing that's helping you get through? I believe alcohol saved my life when I was a teenager. When I was going through all of that trauma and I had no one to talk to and I was super dysregulated and anxious and all that, it calmed everything down. How do you give up the one thing that's always helped you? It's impossible. It's
It
impossible. So I have a lot of like empathy for that. But what I could have done back then, if it was now, right? If this was back when it was, I could devote 1 night a week because I was drinking every day. I could devote 1 day a week to not drinking and to going and doing something that was recovery based and just seeing how that was. And actually, Tuesdays I don't drink, Tuesdays I go to a recovery thing and just start to open up to like new ways of thinking, new ideas, new understandings of the world, new ways people live their lives, make friends that don't drink and just I don't know, maybe you could start slowly. And
yeah.
maybe if that I'd heard that message, that woulda helped me before it got to the point where I almost died. If people can start sooner, you don't have to wait until it's maybe you don't have to wait until it's so bad.
But I feel like so many people are in denial, and if you're questioning if you have a problem, then you probably have a problem. No.
Okay, so I'm drinking lemon water. I have never questioned if I had a problem drinking lemon water. So I'm
Right?
hearing you and I'm thinking it through because 'cause I'm like, I don't wanna do a broad brushstroke, because they also say if you think you might be autistic, you're obviously autistic because nobody who's not autistic
Oh,
thinks they might be autistic. And I'm like, maybe. But like, be careful with the self-diagnosis. But I think self-diagnosis is a great place to start. If you think you have a drinking problem, I knew I had a drinking problem. I just didn't think I was an alcoholic because I really believed what society said about alcoholism. And I was like, I'm not that bad. I'm not the, and in 2009, this is my view of alcoholism, was an old man under a bridge drinking out of a paper bag.
yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, everybody's like, "Well, what is your" I'm like, "It's the stereotypical alcoholic." And that is what when I think alcoholic, I think of that exact image.
Yeah,
I'm not as bad as that person.
I wasn't either. Well,
But that's where we go. We're like, "Well, we're not as bad as that person."
yeah, but maybe actually I was worse by my end. But because I always had these rules, and then the rules changed. My rules were like, I'm never going to drink alone and I'm never going to drink in the morning. At the end, I was drinking alone in the morning because I would wake up with an anxiety attack that was so big. And now I realize that sometimes when I'd be drinking, I'd forget to take my benzo at night. So now I'm like, I was probably having benzo withdrawals. And I'd wake up like literally panicking, like my entire body's gonna explode, looking at the ceiling like, "Ugh." And all I could think was, I hope I have some alcohol in there because it's the only thing that will make this stop. I'm literally at like the point of jumping out of a burning building with the way I feel emotionally. So I would do anything to not feel that way. So if you have that terror inside your body, it's an easy thing to say, of course I want to do whatever's going to get rid of it. Oh, drinking will get rid of it. Oh, of course. Okay, it doesn't matter that I wasn't going to drink in the morning or by myself. I'm going to drink in the morning by myself.
Right.
So I was definitely a morning drinker at the end. Yeah, because
So
I
was
was a
I.
morning panic attacker. And I also have this controversial belief, which I don't think it should be controversial. I believe that we can overcome anxiety.
Yeah,
And I believe that the people who say that we have to be broken or stuck or screwed forever are the people who profit off saying that.
right.
And I believe that we can overcome anxiety. I've overcome my anxiety disorders. I do believe I was kind of misdiagnosed, although I did have panic disorder. I did have social anxiety. I did all these diagnoses like before I got sober. Um, and yeah, the way I look at it now is anxiety is like, it's a nervous system, right? We got a nervous system, so it's like a machine, and the machine is like off. And so we just need to like get it back on. It's not personal. It doesn't mean anything about who we are as a person because I always felt like something's broken in my head. Something is like not right. Something is off. I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. It's like, no, my system is knocked out of place from the trauma and from all the alcohol is like pushing my anxiety down. And then the rebound is the anxiety is popping it up. So I'm literally just, my whole system is out of whack and it's like getting it back in balance. So it's a regulation thing. And so it's not forever. And so if you're drinking because you have anxiety, it's like that's not forever. There is a way out. It's not quick and it's not easy because it's not easy to feel the anxiety in your system, but it's
Mm-mm.
possible. And the way that
Yeah.
I felt when I was in that fuck fear, well, I'm still in my fuck fear mentality, but when I was in that in 2009, when I was first getting sober, in early sobriety, I felt like everyone told me, my doctors, everyone said anxiety is forever. You're never going to get over your anxiety. And I felt like, well, you have to be full of crap because I can't live like this. I can't drink. It's going to kill me. And I can't live with all these anxiety attacks. So I'm going to be delusional and I'm going to decide it's possible to overcome anxiety. And I'm going to do everything I can to overcome my anxiety as if it's possible. I'll be delusional. I was because everyone told me it's not possible. And so what did I do? I learned everything that I could. I studied everything. I read all the books. I did all the teachings. I did all the trainings. I learned transcendental meditation by some guru dude in India. I did everything. Like I
Oh,
was like, I'm going to travel around the world, learn everything I can, do whatever I can. Literally, my brain didn't work. And I was like, I have to get my brain back online. Otherwise, I can't function. So it has to be possible to make a change. And that's why I think AA can be really harmful because it says you're forever broken. And I think we need to flip the script and say, what if I can change? What if I can get better? What if all of this is temporary? And what if I can? What if what I am is really fucking powerful and I can change my entire life? And why don't I pretend that that's possible and just keep taking those steps towards that goal? Maybe I can overcome my anxiety. Maybe I can get sober. Maybe I can turn my life around. People do it. And if
yeah.
other people do it, and I can see that they've done it, maybe it's possible for me too, because I'm also a human with a nervous system and getting my mind set on what I want, not on what I don't want, and I move in that direction. And so my attitude was, I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to be scared and panicking and anxious, walking out of this hole of fear as long as it takes for the anxiety attacks to stop. I'm just going to keep going. And one day they're going to stop. And it was about 2.5 years until my anxiety attacks stopped. And it was night or day the way it happened. I
Wow.
woke up one day and I was like, oh my God, my anxiety's gone. Like it was like my system had shifted. But all those whacks, it was like cutting a tree down. All those whacks that I took at that tree, all the times I was trying to meditate, even though it was like so ridiculous, but now I know I'm ADHD, it makes totally sense. My rule in early sobriety with meditating was I just have to sit on the pillow for 2 minutes. I could look at my phone. I could look around. I could fucking twitch. I can do whatever I want. I just can't stand up.
So thank you, because I tell people, I'm like, I have such a problem, and it must be the ADHD,
Yeah,
because I'm like,
and
I
now
have
and
such a
but
problem.
then I've gone to, like, meditation centers for 2 months and meditated the entire time. But we start where we're at, and it's our brains can change. It's neuroplasticity, so we change over time, and then the brain that we're walking into sobriety with, that on day 1 sobriety, is not the brain that we have at 30 days, and it's not the brain we have at 6 months or 1 year, or me 15 years later, 15 and a half years later. It's not the same brain. The brain changes, so as we change our brain, the brain heals just from us not drinking. It recovers on its own. The same way if we get a cut on our arm, it'll heal on its own. Our brains are healing on our own. We are natural healers, and we can do things to heal our brain as well. So our brains are shifting, then the structure and the function of our brains are different. So we're having a different experience of life, and we keep growing and evolving. But we have to start with the idea that it's possible for us to get better, because then we will lock our minds on that and we'll start to take those actions and we'll do the things. Because if you just say it's never going to get better, then you sit on your couch and scroll TikTok. Well, guess what? It's not going to get better. But if you get all delulu up on it and you're like, I'm gonna overcome my anxiety, and you just every day do something. So I was like, I'm just gonna pretend it's possible. And yeah, 2.5 years later, it was like I woke up, whack, whack, whack at that tree. All the actions I took, boom, timber, the tree fell, and my anxiety was gone.
I
Not
love
gone completely. I still have anxiety because I'm a human, but my overwhelming anxiety, the chronic, I haven't had a panic attack or an anxiety attack since 2012.
wow.
So it's been forever. And I had one every day. But I believed I've done this multiple times when everyone told me things weren't possible. And I was like, I have to believe it's possible. When everyone said you'll die if you leave AA, I'm like, I have to believe that's bullshit because I have to go. So I just have, so it's like this magic. It's not magic, but like the transformation happens when you decide, and it doesn't mean all delusions are going to come true. That's not what I'm saying, just magical thinking. But when I thought it has to be true that this is temporary, it actually became temporary. And I think that message is really important. Yeah, so I think it's really important to choose that the change that we want to have in our lives, what we want for ourselves, is possible, even if we don't believe it, even if we don't see evidence of it. I didn't see any evidence of anybody overcoming their anxiety disorders. I just knew I couldn't live like that. I'm not
Huh.
going to unalive myself. I can't drink. I'm screwed. There has to be a door number 3. And I'm going to walk as if that door number 3 exists. I'm going to act as if that's real, that I can overcome it. And so what did I do? I did all the things that helped me overcome anxiety. The Power of Now was actually super helpful in early sobriety for me. That book, it was called Practicing the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I listened to an audiobook for 15 minutes every morning while I'm putting on my mascara and getting ready for work or whatever. And I got Eckhart Tolle into my head, and he's talking about notice the sensations in your body. It revolutionized my entire world. I think that really helped me because I was doing things every day to change my brain in the way that I wanted it changed, even though nobody said it was possible and I didn't believe it was possible. I took the action every day. I just took a step that way every day, and then I ended up there. And
Yeah.
there's been multiple things in my life when it's come to health stuff that people told me things aren't possible. Even with ADHD, I don't want to get too controversial, but everyone was like, you need to get on Adderall. And I was like, after all the trauma I've been on with Klonopin, I'm not too excited about getting on anything, people. I have nothing against it. It's definitely not a relapse. That's fine. Bless you, do it. But I'm a little bit PTSD about this, like, because it took me 2.5 years to get on Klonopin that I was on for 2.5 years. I'm worried about the flip side now. What is it going to
Right.
be like if I get off this? So I'm like, let me try other stuff first. Can I try other stuff first? So everyone told me, no, it's Adderall's the only way. And I'm like, okay, I hear you, but I'm going to try something else first, just in case. And so I did a bunch of shit, and now my brain's better than ever. And it's not to say that I wouldn't ever take Adderall, but that was my fifth choice, not my first choice. My first
Right.
choice is to try to do something to change my brain on my
Yeah.
own. And that's not for everybody. That's my personal, just like what my intuition said. So I have found for me that diet, like keto,
Yes.
diet supplements, researching like a mofo. I do all the research. I read all when I first found out I was autistic, I spent 2 years reading research papers on autism because I got to figure this shit out. And so I really vibed with the Biomed autism crowd who was talking about how they were recovering their kids from autism because I was in a really bad way, like really struggling with my sensory system. And so they were talking about things like specific supplements and ketogenic diets. So I took dairy out of my diet. I was already gluten-free. So I did these things. I do light therapy. I love light, like near infrared and far infrared and red light. So I do 3 different kinds of light therapy every day.
Wow.
I go on nature walks. I go on a walk every morning at sunrise. I go on a half an hour nature walk, and then I go after work, I go on another hour walk. I know this is not for everybody. It's a lot, but I have found that when I do very basic things, like I get adequate even just sunlight, nutrition, that my brain does so much better.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with needing a higher power or a sponsor, and I'm not judging a higher power or any of that, but what's actually working for me now is understanding science, going with my intuition, and then kind of trying things like biohacking, literally.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to it. Biohacking.
Yeah, I read
And
all the studies. I just geeked out. I think it like the way that I feel about it now is I feel very empowered about all of it because I've had so many like missteps. But is it misstep or is that what life is, right? I've had so many like kind of going down the wrong paths that I've learned a lot, and always learning, and I'm always humbling myself because I always feel like I got somewhere and then I something happens and then there's more to go. Like the mountain doesn't end. You get somewhere, but you're not really there. So I have to
yeah,
always remember that. Um, but yeah, oh shoot, I lost my
that's the ADHD.
totally. I
That's the
lost
squirrel.
my
Squirrel.
what was I saying? What were we talking about?
The
Where's
mountain
that
never
going?
ends. The mountain never ends.
Um, so what really works for me now as a result of being in AA for 10 years and really believing it was all true. I believed the doctrine as like the dogma was truth, right? I lived as if it was true. And I had very real tangible benefits from being in that ideology. But after leaving AA and deprogramming and realizing that I no longer think that AA is true, like Santa, right? That it made me hesitant to drop into any ideology without thinking around the bend. So, for example, when I found out I'm autistic, I did not go into one autism. The first thing I Googled was like, what are all the autism ideologies? And I read about them all. I was like, because I don't want to fall into one and then just like lock in my identity and then do what I did with AA, where I lock my identity in as alcoholic and then I never look around because I'm stuck in an ideology. So now I want to be a little more liberated from ideologies and I want to use them to my benefit and my understanding and kind of gather what makes sense to me, what I notice the science says, and then test on myself or whatever. So yeah, I've kind of love that about me now, which is the understanding of the importance of critical thinking and how it can open up our entire life. And that's what I would encourage everybody to do if you're in a place where you have the capability to, because in early sobriety, I didn't have the capacity. I didn't have the ability to focus. I could not do all the research. Literally, it's squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Like I was like,
Yeah.
my meditating that we were talking about earlier. My sponsor in AA is like, you got to meditate every day. That's step 11. I was like, okay, but like, I can't even, I can't even watch a movie. I'm like, who's that? Who's this person in the movie? My roommate's like, that's the main character. And she's like irritated because I don't know who any of the characters are. I'm running around. I'm on my phone. I'm over here. I'm over there.
Yes.
I'm like, I think
My
I'm
life.
ADHD. And my sponsor's like, it's all alcoholism. I'm like, okay, it's all alcoholism. What the fuck?
Wow.
So I have no idea. And I think at that point, Adderall probably would have been a good thing for me at that point in my life. At this point, I'm a lot more, even though I'm very excitable today, I'm the most stable I've ever been in my entire life from everything that I've done. And so The 2-minute meditating was what my sponsor told me, and I would sit down on a little pillow on the floor, and I had my phone in front of me with a timer for 2 minutes, and I'd be like, "Is it 2 minutes yet? Is it 2 minutes?" It's amazing how many times you can close your eyes and open them and it's still not 2 minutes. Like, it's just unreal. And my 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. And so my only rule was you can't stand. And then after a while, like, I don't know how long, days, weeks, months, after a while, I could keep my eyes closed the entire 2 minutes. And then I can go 3 minutes. And then I went to 5 minutes. And then I was at 5 minutes for a while. And it wasn't, and most of it was just thinking. It was a think-a-tate, let's be real. But my eyes were closed now, which was growth. First, I didn't stand, and then I didn't open my eyes. So I was like, whoa, like, whoa. And then I like learned, and then I ended up teaching meditation too. And I would host these like circles at my house to teach people how to meditate and stuff because it really changed everything for me. So then my rule was, okay, all I need to do is one time in this meditation, remember to breathe. Just one time, that's my goal. So even if the 5 minutes that I'm sitting there, I'm just thinking about what I want to eat or this or that or whatever, or the boyfriend or the TV show or whatever, right? If one time I'm like, oh yeah, breathing, then I knew I was meditating right because I was more aware of my breath than normal. So as long as I was more aware of my breath than normal, I knew I was meditating right. And then it would be maybe 2 breaths I would catch in 5 minutes, and then 3. And then next thing I know, I'm building up this skill. And even like when I was 1 year sober, I would have to set the timer for 15 minutes at work. And my rule was for 15 minutes, I have to work I can't do anything else. And I'd be like wanting
Yeah.
to jump around and wanting to go to Facebook and wanting to whatever. And I'm like, timer didn't go off yet. I have to just, so I had to train myself like a puppy. I had to like reel my brain in, just keep reeling it in, reeling it in, reeling it in. And that's part of like the chops at the tree that did that timber, my anxiety is over. It took a long time to train my brain because I'm literally carving new pathways or blazing new trails in my brain. And I just was like committed because I was so chaotic and so anxious and so scattered that I was like, no, I'm going to keep doing this the same way that you're going to keep training your puppy to not like poop on the floor because you love your puppy and you don't want poop on the floor. You have a goal.
Consistency. Like consistency
So I
is
wouldn't
huge.
stop crapping on myself, you know? And so
Yeah.
that's how I started with meditating. And yeah, I've gone on to do like month-long meditation retreats and stuff. But I didn't start there.
Right. You were consistent with it.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that, and you might get this from ADHD vibes, but it took me 5 years, I think, to have a daily meditation practice. 5 years of wanting a daily meditation practice to actually meditate daily. Or maybe it was like
So I'm
4
not
years.
a lost cause. I'm not a lost cause.
No, and I wanted to, and then I would forget, and then I wouldn't want to, and then I was resistant, and then I was like, so then my rule was like, I meditate every day except the 3 days that I don't, because I was like, off the hook. And then eventually it just was easy, and eventually I just did, and then I meditated every day for like until I think like last summer I stopped daily meditating as a conscious choice.
Wow.
But yeah, and so I just don't give up. I think part of like the way my brain works, I think I've seen that in autism literature. I just kind of get stubborn on a goal that is impossible
Yeah.
that has to do with my mental well-being. And I keep trying. And I think that that's really important for all of us. If you want to
Right.
get sober and you keep drinking, keep trying. Keep trying. You're worth it. You know, it's not easy. None of it is. I didn't relapse. I didn't drink again. I don't need to use even that language of relapse. I didn't drink again since I went to rehab or since I went to AA. But I drank again all the times I tried to never drink again, the 10 years before I even went to rehab. So relapse is a huge part of my story. It just wasn't after AA. It wasn't after my official sobriety date. But I was trying to quit all the time. Or all the times I tried to quit smoking cigarettes. You know what I mean? And failed and
Yeah.
failed and failed and failed, but now I haven't had a cigarette since 2010. So it's just
Kristen?
keep trying at the thing that you want. It takes a while for our brains to change, but a different brain doesn't have a struggle. Like I don't think about drinking at all now. It's not even on my radar, and I couldn't not think about a drink before. Our brains actually change, and the brain that has a little more time up in sobriety or a little more time up in the meditation practice, even if it's just closing the eyes or sitting down. Not even sitting still, it's sitting down. It's just sitting down. It was like this. I was like, "This sucks. My sponsor said I'm gonna die if I don't meditate. Oh, fuck. I'm gonna die. I'm in a religious cult. I'm gonna die if I don't sit here." Ah! It's kinda like that. It was bananas. That's full on coconut bananas. Ah! And
Oh,
just I just kept trying, and that's kind of I just feel like, honestly, the way I even think about myself is that I've just had all these, like, mental, like, I think of it as disabilities. Like, I've struggled so much with my brain
right.
and even with anxiety or mental health, and just keep trying and to know that the brain changes, and it's not hard forever because creating the new I think of it like when you blaze a trail on like, if in the jungle. You have to blaze it the first time, and then it's easier to go down that trail the next time, and so the part where you have the machete and you're blazing that trail, that's doing the new habit, whether the habit is not drinking or going to 1 recovery meeting a week, like Smart
Okay.
Recovery, or doing 1 meditation a week for 2 minutes where you just sit there and you don't stand. Whatever it is, it's after a while, the brain is changing and it's adapting to that, and it becomes easier, and then you can move the goal become bigger. And don't give up on yourself.
Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for that. I think that too many people just give up so easily, and they just start like, that's my life."
And it doesn't have to be. And
No.
there's nothing wrong with that either. But you can choose to keep going if it's a worthwhile goal. And I think sobriety is a worthwhile goal, or even moderation. There's so many people that have reached out to me that left AA. That's a lot of my experience. So that's why I mention AA so much, because that was so much of my sobriety. But a lot of people have left AA and they've started drinking moderately. And I know a lot of people who really like the Sinclair method, where you take that pill. And I think what it does, my understanding, you guys would know more, the people who are watching, but that it changes, it blocks a neurotransmitter, a receptor in the brain so that you don't get as much pleasure from alcohol. I think that's what it does. I'm not an expert on this at all. Not an
I've
expert
had a
on
couple
anything.
people on that have taken a pill.
Yeah, and so they naturally wanna drink less because they're getting less reward from it, so their brain doesn't want it as much, and they're able to moderate it or to slow their drinking down, and I think that's great. I've also read great studies about ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and how if you have a very specific kind of therapy, like from a trained person in this modality, while you're also on ketamine, that it actually can change your brain so that it can, like, almost, like, unhook you from addiction. Like, that's what it those aren't the
Mhm.
right terms, right? I'm just kinda giving an analogy, and so I'm really hopeful for all that. Another thing, last thing I'll say, is I felt inspired by my intuition to go to the jungle of Peru and drink ayahuasca. And that was really confusing to me because I was brainwashed to believe that plant medicine is a relapse and bad and on the way to death. And it turns out that plants can be very medicinal and healing. And in my opinion, psychedelics have nothing for me to do with my drinking at all. And so I felt, this is 2.5 years ago, that I was supposed to go down there. My intuition's like, "Go," and I'm scared because I don't like psychedelics, they freak me out. I like control, I like to be in control of my facilities, I like the world to look normal, and I'm like, I'm formerly very anxious person, I don't want
Mm.
shit to look crazy, like, I want
Right?
stability. And so I was like, "Oh my god, well, I'm not gonna betray my intuition," so I went down to Peru and I did ayahuasca with a shaman down there by the Amazon River for, like, 4 ceremonies, and, and there was people that came there to the retreat so that they could get sober. They were using that as their modality to get sober. And this one guy in specific, I've been friends with him and followed up with him afterwards. His drinking greatly reduced after that. He had a huge experience, like an inner child healing basically on Mama Aya. And he went back to his country and drank a lot less, but was less interested in drinking. And I believe that he's sober now.
Really?
I haven't talked to him in
I've
like a
heard
year or something, but yeah, so people are using psychedelics to get sober.
I've
I'm not
heard
recommending it, I'm just saying
yeah,
I love that there's so many options now.
yeah. It ties into there's not just one option.
Um,
Um, before we end, because I have to go get my kids,
yeah.
where can we find you?
Sobriety Bestie. So, I'm Sobriety Bestie on YouTube. That's where I'm hanging out. I'm making videos every day right now. It's a lot of fun. I would love to meet you in the comments on Sobriety Bestie channel if you are vibing with me or you want to ask me any questions. What I want to do right now, and primarily like my motivation is being who I needed when I was going through my pain when nobody was there for me. And that's changed. Like I have a whole playlist on my YouTube about benzos because there was no information about them. So I have a whole benzo series on my YouTube channel. I have a bunch of anxiety videos on my YouTube channel. I have a getting sober playlist. I have a early sobriety playlist, emotional sobriety playlist, psychedelics and sobriety playlist. And now I have a leaving AA playlist that I'm speaking about a lot. So I have a lot of free resources on Sobriety Bestie YouTube. I'm Sobriety Bestie Instagram. SobrietyBestie.com is my website. I have all sorts of online courses that are about anxiety, emotional sobriety, all that stuff. But really, I would just like to meet anybody who's listening and vibing in the comments on my YouTube channel. It'd be fun.
Yeah.
Happy to help in any way I can.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. There's so much, I mean, I feel like we could go on and on and on with way more, but I really appreciate you being here. And yeah, I will put your information in the description so they can come and find you.
Cool. Well, this has been fun. I know I just like blasted at you,
We
but
love it.
I really appreciate what you're doing and that you're speaking with so many different people with so many different backgrounds because my message isn't for everybody, but somebody else's you know what I mean? You have
Yes.
your channel
Yeah.
has a lot of
Yep.
everything, and I think that's the best way to do it is to offer
Yep.
so many different stories and ideas and paths, and I just really love what you're doing, and I'm happy that I got to be a small part of it. So thank you for
Yeah.
having me.